Yeah, Adam Ray is a guest, I think, tonight, and Tom Green. But I'm not too big of a Tom Green fan. Yeah, but I like Adam Ray quite a bit, and he kills it every time he's on Kill Tony. You ever see him do like the Dr. Phil stuff?
He's like more famous as Dr. Phil than he is himself, right?
Yeah, I think at this point, yeah. But
at this point, it's like Adam Ray, who the Dr. Phil guy. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he said he's gonna start doing like other characters soon, but I feel like the Dr. Phil stuff is just like crushing it right now. But he's good as himself too. He's always good on Kill Tony. I'm looking forward to tonight's episode.
What is the name of shit? I'm drawing a blank on the guy who he was another one of like Rogan, like Kyle Dunnigan. Kyle Dunnigan was hilarious throughout the pandemic with these like fake face swaps. Like they looked terrible, but it was like that on purpose. And he did like Biden. He did everybody at his own show. He did At Home with Sly Stallone. Like it was hilarious. But I feel like he had like one major hit, and for him, he had to like then be like, hey, I'm gonna do this other stuff. We're like, no, we want Sly Stallone. We want Sly Stallone. And then he had to but it helped him because we watched like Kyle Dunnigan, like his Bill Maher is really good. Obviously, his Biden's hilarious. His Ben Shapiro is fantastic. He does a Nancy Pelosi that's hilarious. Like who's out there doing Nancy Pelosi impersonations? Kyle Dunnigan is, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he is very funny. Yeah, Kyle Dunnigan's good, but definitely keep an eye on Adam Ray if you're into like the stand-up comedy world. You're into that, like definitely keep an eye on Adam Ray. So you spoke about one hit kind of like making people famous. Rose Namajunas, we all remember her. God bless you. I am the best. And then the head kick against Weili Zhang. Jesus. That was her one hit that I feel like really capitalized Rose Namajunas, brought her into stardom, and now it's been a little bit of time away. She's headlining this week's UFC fight night from the UFC Apex, making her return since her not that was like one of the worst fights of all time against Karl Esparza. But before we jump into that, I just want to ask everybody, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like the video, it helps us out a lot. Subscribing also helps out a lot. Follow us on social media, X and Instagram @_PickinWinners. Tom is @PickinFightsTom. I'm @PickinKeith. And you can watch us and listen to us on Spotify as well. All right, so we're going to start with the main card here this week. How's that work for you, Tom?
Let's do it. Let's start with the main card.
All righty. What do you think about this fight card and this opener? What do you got?
Well, in terms of the fight card, they did not do anything for name recognition here. This seems like one of those fight cards that like the UFC was like, hey, listen, we got to have, 45 fights a year. That means naturally some of these cards are not going to be filled with very, very well-known people, especially the ones surrounding like 299, 300, and even into 301. They're just using a lot of star power. So other cards are going to take the hit. This one's in the Apex, right? Yeah, so it's in the Apex. So they said they're going to get away with that, get away from that. Haven't seen it yet. But nevertheless, we get a card where, hey, we're going to skip the prelim notables when there's not too many notable things that we want to discuss. Head straight to a main card opener between two guys that, we really had to fish and figure out what are we going to say about these two guys before we came on here. Luis Pajuelo, Corazon. Actually, why am I saying their names? I'm going to let the resident half Spanish speaker to take this over. Tell us about these guys.
Luis Pajuelo, and we were talking before we jumped on. I like their nicknames. His is Corazon de León, which is Heart of the Lion, and then you have Fernando Padilla, which El Valiente. I think that means the violence. If I'm right about that or wrong about that, let me know in the comments if you are a Spanish-speaking Pickin' Fights friend out there. But yeah, both of these guys, relatively fresh faces. Fernando Padilla, this is his third fight in the UFC, made his debut 10 months ago, knocking out Julian Rosa. Good fight for Fernando Padilla, but then he came out and lost his last one against Kyle Nelson, which, Kyle Nelson, middling talent. And then you have Luis Padilla, Pajuelo. El Valiente. What does El Valiente mean? Asks Tom. Luis Pajuelo is making his UFC debut. And, this is a guy that he's a slight dog in this one, but just from how it appears, he looks a little bit more solid. Yes, he is making his UFC debut, but it's in the smaller octagon at the UFC Apex. He's a slightly older man, but and slightly shorter as well. He's got a reach disadvantage by quite a bit. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm kind of leaning towards Fernando Padilla just because he's got like a longer style. He relies on his kickboxing a little bit more. But Luis Pajuelo has a slightly better grappling game in this. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. I don't know. I mean, he's also got good hands too. So for the dog money and for the nickname, I like Luis Pajuelo. His nickname, okay, here's what it is, bro. It's Lionheart in Spanish. So yeah, so I'm gonna go with Luis Pajuelo. What do you like, Tom?
All right. Well, for that exact reason, the other Lionheart has not been doing well. Not fighting up to maybe his resume, or as his flawless smile would have him thinking that he fights up to. So I'm going to go with Fernando Padilla here. I think that he has the better fights, the better experience, the better performances on his record here. I know he's coming off a loss, against Kyle Nelson, unanimous decision there 6 months ago. I think, because he was in the UFC, came in, got that win, right hook over Julian Erosa, something that guys who usually don't do, on their debut, that might have even been on short notice. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, but, coming in to get that win, maybe take a step back. I think he's primed to take a step forward here against a guy, that has a little bit of a cursed nickname. He's a little bit of the dog here too. Got a knockout over Robbie Riggs 6-0 6 months ago on the Contender Series as a proper camp for this. So going to be interesting to see. I think both of these guys have knockout power. I'm going to go with the guy that has a little bit more UFC experience against the guy who's making his UFC debut. He's also the taller, the bigger guy. Looking at Tapology, 59% on Pajuelo. The underdog here, Pajuelo. Oh, these names are too familiar for my
Pajuelo.
So Pajuelo looks like he is going to be getting the favor of the Tapology votes at plus 145. Give me the favorite, minus 170. I don't really know either way. So, if you feel strongly, go for it. But I'll go with the minus 170 guy. I'll trust Vegas here. Anything else that you want to say maybe about this one?
No, just let us know what you think about that pick in the comments. I personally like Pajuelo. I think he's got more finishing power in this fight. But next one I'm looking forward to, we got Billy Quarantillo taking on Youssef Zalal, and I am rolling with Billy Q here this week. I'm a big Billy Q fan. He's 35 years old at this point. It's not like he's going to have a future as like a championship contender at any point going forward. However, he's a guy that's always going to get in there and deliver entertaining fights, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do this week against Youssef Zalal. We've started to see Billy Q in his last couple of fights develop his striking a little bit more. Sure, he's 3-2, but all of them have been good fights against, pretty decent competition. And Youssef Zalal does not have the same UFC experience against the same level of competition that Billy Q does at this point. We've seen Billy Q, like I was just saying, he's brushed up on his striking quite a bit. His grappling's always been there. So, with all that being said, I'm gonna go with Billy Q. He's got a more complete game here, and I like the guy. You're gonna see him throw some entertaining things, some spinning back fists, some nasty elbows. He likes to get in there and grapple against the cage and then break away and throw an elbow. So I'm gonna go with Billy Q. Make it entertaining, make it bloody. What do you like, Tom?
It's so funny because if you showed me both of these two fighters and then showed me their ages, I would say Billy the Kid is obviously the kid. He's 35 freaking years old, going up against 27-year-old Youssef Zalal. Lucky for Billy Q, he has a pace and he just puts it on you. He refuses to back up. He's just going to keep coming forward, and he has a pretty good chin to boot. I think he might have been knocked out by Edson Barbosa for the first time, but this guy has a really wicked chin and an ability to fight back and throughout the round. So I really like Billy Quarantillo in this fight. I think Youssef Zalal is a guy who got kicked out of the UFC before because he had kind of like an inactive style, staying on the outside, uses that 75-inch reach, that 5-inch reach. He has really long legs as well. He stays on the outside, and it kind of makes for a really boring fight. And I just don't think Billy Q is going to allow him to do that. He's going to keep charging forward. I think he's going to use solid boxing and kind of his a little bit of an awkward style, pressure style to go ahead and put the pressure on Youssef Zalal and show him why there's such a disparity. Now, you can't always go by, the Tapology worldwide rankings, but shit, whenever you see 245 versus 18, a guy who's been in the UFC for a long time versus a guy who's just trying to make his way back, especially with a outside octagon kind of boring, like point fighter type of style, go with Billy the Kid every time. So Billy Q get my vote.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Next up, we got Payton Talbott versus Cameron Saaiman, and I am going to go with Cameron Saaiman this week. Cameron Saaiman comes out of, DDP's camp over there. They train together, good buddies out of South Africa. I forget what MSP stands for, his nickname, but he's going up against this guy, Payton Talbott, who, he's a bad dude. He's got really good stand-up game, really good jiu-jitsu game, like very aggressive looking for submissions. Won his last fight by submission. Just uses his limbs really well. He's just very spidery down there, like throwing up stuff with his legs and looking for arm bars, looking for chokes. But Cameron Saaiman is very by the book, technical. He's got a great stand-up game. He's got good takedown defense. He's, good up against the cage, getting out of the clinches. He's just very technical on his feet too. Like throws a lot of leg kicks. There was something off about his last fight. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head against Christian Rodriguez. I think it was on that same card that DDP and Sean Strickland fought on. But I like Cameron Saaiman. He's got a complete skill set, and he's very technical, very crisp, fundamentals, like John Stockton type stuff. So I'm going with Cameron Saaiman this week. What do you think?
MSP means most savage player, a nickname given to him by his coach when he was at K1. So just a little bit of insight for you. Just kidding. I Googled that while you were talking. Listen, Cameron Saaiman is the classic kickboxer against Payton Talbott, who's a guy who's, a little bit more of a submission fighter. He's a little bit older at 25 years old. Cameron Saaiman, 23 years old. Been in the UFC a little bit longer here. Manny Martinez, Stephen Kozlow, Josh Wayne Kim to get in off the Contender Series and knock out over Terrence Mitchell. Pretty good wins here. The loss, Christian Rodriguez, first loss of his career. I do like Cameron Saaiman. I think he is a little bit young. I think he's also a little bit like body-wise, a little bit underdeveloped. I think you really want to see him grow into his own and become a little bit of a bigger dude. Payton Talbott's gonna be the bigger dude in the cage. He's a little bit taller, a little bit longer, and a little bit more filled out. So that does give me concern about Cameron Saaiman. But when you look back at some of their competitions and how they fight, I think Cameron Saaiman being the K1 guy, I think his takedown defense is going to come along faster than Payton Talbott would be able to potentially close the gap when it comes to striking here. Payton Talbott, he does have 5 wins, 71% of his wins coming by knockout. I just think Cameron Saaiman is going to be a little bit better, even though you got some knockouts and some flying knee knockouts by Payton Talbott. I think it's hard to say who's going to be better because they're both so young and they're so unproven, and you're watching them both get better at the same time. I'm still going to go with Cameron Saaiman here. I think he's just been in the UFC just a little bit longer, and even though he's younger, I think his style is just going to match up just a little bit better here. Don't feel super strong one way or the other. I think that's why the line is so close. And again, we talked about it when we kicked off the show that the UFC is going to have cards where they put a lot of name values out there, and then some where they don't. I think this one is potentially where they're lining up 2 guys who could have been really good or had different trajectories if they allowed them to have some of the can crushing type of debuts and can crushing type of matchups. Could have maybe built them up as 2 young prospects who got to the UFC fairly early in their career. But since we're seeing them go one-on-one here, I'm going to go with Cameron Saaiman. A little bit more experience. I like the kickboxing experience if it's going to be a stand-up fight. If it's going to be a ground game, I think that's where I would try to lean towards Payton Talbott a little bit. But at 23 years old, training from Pretoria, South Africa, I think, is potentially on the rise with Dricus du Plessis, holding the belt. So let's go with Cameron Saaiman, the most savage player here, but very low confidence pick.
Nah, I'm high confidence. Not super high confidence, but I'm more confident in it than you are in him. I like Cameron Saaiman there. Next up, Edmen Shahbazyan versus AJ Dobson. I'm kind of torn on this one because Edmen Shahbazyan is 1-4 over his last 5, but AJ Dobson is like nothing special. And Edmen Shahbazyan has fought Anthony Hernandez. His one win is against the guy whose name I can't even. If I said it, it would sound like I was sneezing. Lost to Nasruddin Imavov, Jack Hermanson, Derek Brunson. I mean, that's all top-level competition, looking at the middleweight division. So Edmen Shahbazyan has kind of gotten a bad break. But, and AJ Dobson isn't really anything special in particular. So, and you also have Edmen Shahbazyan, who's probably fighting to remain in the UFC this week. He's got a pretty decent skill set, and the Tapology fans are with him. Vegas is with him. I'm just personally not confident in him because of the recent string of losses. That's not great at all, but maybe we can look past that and he could beat AJ Dobson, who really has not faced anybody, the same caliber of, Edmen Shahbazyan's competition. You look at, and like when he's tried to go up against up and coming guys like Armin Petrosian, Jacob Malkoun, like a couple of these guys, he loses, and he's only 1-2 in the UFC himself. So I'm gonna go with Edmen Shahbazyan for the experience against the higher level competition. Vegas is on his side this week. You got to kind of like look at why the odds are -185, and maybe AJ Dobson's actually closer to fighting his way, out of the UFC, right? Because like Edmen's at least taken on hard fights, picked up the phone when they've called him on short notice, like. Edmen Shahbazyan's probably got a little bit more security here in his job. But I'm going to go with Edmen Shahbazyan this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think I'm going to follow you and go with Edmen Shahbazyan. I think, he is 1-4 over his last 5. You mentioned that they were guys, towards the top echelon of the division. I think Edmen Shahbazyan is a guy who I think at one point he was trained by Ronda Rousey, and then it sucks for him that his ground game has just not been able to compete. I mean, you look at the losses, it's a Derek Brunson, TKO via ground and pound. Jack Hermanson, another guy who's a strong ground and pound game. Nasruddin Imavov, that was an elbow from a crucifix. And then you look at Anthony Hernandez, another ground and pound loss. If AJ Dobson is able to get this to the ground, Edmen Shahbazyan has just not shown an ability to be able to defend himself and win fights once it goes to the ground. So for that, I think it's always going to present a concern until we see that he can prove that that's not a concern anymore. That being said, he is the better striker here. He's always been known as a better striker. At 185 pounds, he's really kind of stuck because he doesn't have the frame and doesn't have the success track record really to go up to a 205. At the same time, he's far too big to drop to a 170. So Edmen has really got to figure it out here. He's 26 years old, so he is still coming into his prime, whereas AJ may be on the opposite side of it, heading into more of a decline. Edmen is also going to be slightly a bit the bigger guy here. It's really just going to come down to the fact that he's been out for 9 months. He's had a lot of TKO losses. What does that do to his obviously his brain, but what does that do to his confidence level, and how's he going to feel walking out there? Again, his back does feel up against the wall. AJ Dobson coming off a win probably doesn't feel that as much. A little bit less experience, a little bit older in age, because of the power and because of the ability to knock people out. Granted, we haven't seen it other than against Dalcha Leon Gambula since 2020. I'm still going to go with the golden boy Edmen Shahbazyan here, but I mean, another really low confidence one, just because, like, what has he really done to instill confidence in picking him in the last 4 years? So for those reasons, I'm going with Edmen ever so slightly. But honestly, this could go any which way. I think the only safe pick is like not picking Edmen to win by submission, because I think obviously we don't expect that to happen. Or maybe Edmen by like a ground and pound TKO. But then again, he is 26, so you have that ability to potentially improve fast. Let's see if is there anything else telling about his record that could maybe like make me feel slightly more confident in picking him. I don't know what I'm even looking for. I'm gonna pick him. I did like the head kick over Brad Tavares, who's a guy who's traditionally really, really hard to finish. And that's really, I guess, his main claim to fame right there.
That's in the UFC so far.
Yeah, geez. That's hard. And you have a canceled bout against Dusko Todorovic with, Todorovic withdrew. That would have been really telling. That would have been interesting because that would have been just a straight up standard, a strikers battle.
Yeah, that would have been.
Is there anything in here? I mean, again, 3 submission wins. Wasn't submitted by Armand Petrosian, who's more of a striker anyway. So I don't know what I'm talking about there. Yeah, you know what? Let's go with Edmen Shahbazyan. I think we're probably going to see a striking battle here, even though AJ Dobson has submitted guys in the past. So striking battle, Edmen Shahbazyan, younger, probably a little bit faster and a little bit more power here. But shit, it's a coin toss for me.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I'm going with Edmen as well. Next up, Karl Williams versus Justin Tafa. Karl Williams, newer to the UFC. Justin Tafa, we just saw not too long ago, like 2 weeks ago, was supposed to fight at 299, and then his brother Junior took over for him. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a weird situation because, like, normally you don't like fighters going through a situation like that because they have to cut weight and stuff like that. But, like, how much weight is Justin Tafa really cutting to get to heavyweight? If any at all. Like, I think he probably just fights his natural weight. So, like, a lot of those stuff, normal circumstances kind of are void in this situation, I would like to imagine. Karl Williams' new opponent, probably a little bit fresher. He did just go through a camp, so we can't totally invalidate the fact that, like, he was training as if he was going to have a fight, had to take a little bit of time. How does that work for him? How do you roll in without overtraining? But Karl Williams, good competition for him, new to the UFC. He's the favorite in this fight. And that's just, I think that's, well, see, I don't know why that is, because he's the older man. He's less tenured in the UFC. And in the UFC, he's fought Chase Sherman and Lucas Brzeski, if I'm saying Brzeski, however you say it. Excuse me, slightly bigger, 6'3" to 6 foot, 79-inch reach to 74 inches for Justin Tafa. But we know that Justin Tafa can close the distance on big guys. On the right night, we have seen Justin Tafa get in there and close the distance. But Karl Williams hasn't really shown us, anything to worry about with his chin in his past couple of fights. And Justin Tafa has given us things to worry about with his gas tank, stuff like that. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to, I don't know. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go with Justin Tafa. Hope that he closes the distance and finds a way to land on Karl Williams' chin early in this fight. Rest on his laurels a little bit and just do what he knows how to do, and rely on his experience versus Karl Williams' inexperience. Because when a guy like Justin Tafa is coming at you and you haven't really been in there with a guy like that, he's 35 with 10 fights. Nah, you know what? I'm gonna go with Justin Tafa. Why not? I'll go with Justin Tafa this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, this is really scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
Yeah.
Karl Tuafa and Alex Nicholson, MMA, bare knuckle MMA, which I am actually starting to like, is where Chase Sherman has gotten the majority of his success, not inside of the UFC. So with that being said, I look at, the fighters here. Justin Tafa just cannot seem to get a win over, unless they're literally the worst heavyweight fighter inside the UFC. You're looking at Harry Hunsucker, Barker Porter, and Austin Lane. Literally, you have to be the worst person in the heavyweight division for Justin Lane to beat you. Karl Williams is 5-0 over his last 5, coming in 9-1. But do you take a look at who he's fought?
Nobody.
Right, 2-0. Saaiman Marini, 9-8. Jimmy Lawson, 4-1. Lucas Brzeski, 8-2-1, 0-2 or 0-3 or 0-1-2 or 0-2-1, whatever it is. Lucas Brzeski inside of the UFC, just not. I think I just showed it up on the screen that he had a terrible record. And then you have a win against Chase Sherman, again, terrible record, and only his wins come in MMA outside of the UFC and when they're bare knuckle. So it's like literally you have in the co-main event potentially the 2 worst heavyweights in the UFC right now. That being said, I'm going with Justin Tafa. I think he can knock out Karl Williams.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for as well.
Here's the thing. Karl Williams, when he fought, this is my main thing. When he fought Chase Sherman, he was getting his leg chewed up by Chase Sherman. And, he won a unanimous decision, but that was far closer than it should have been. Chase Sherman loses to guys who suck. At least Justin Tafa is beating the guys who suck. Not Jared Vandera, but the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. All right, you ready for the main event?
Yeah, Jesus. What you
Yeah, this
all right.
is
Well, I mean, listen, everyone likes Rose, but she's 31, but feels like she's 40. Like,
yo, if you think that this if you think that this UFC card sucks, comment L in the chat.
yeah, comment L in the chat. Or W if you like it. If this is what you want to see, if this is the UFC that you've wanted to cultivate for all these years, like, hell yeah, let us know. But let
Bro,
me
I
know
don't blame them. They wasted all the star power on these upcoming couple of pay-per-views, the last couple. It's like, who are they going to put on these? Like, who's going to be?
You have the two worst heavyweights in the UFC as the co-main event.
I mean, who are you going to get though? Like, the whole heavyweight.
Not the two worst.
Anyone that they
as the co-main.
Yeah, no, there's definitely somebody that could have been better, but they always make it a heavyweight fight on these like fight night cards. It's always like a heavyweight as the main event or the co-main, and especially like the ones in the Apex. I know not a lot of people are watching, but I will say it's a good opportunity for Thug Rose to get back out there and get back in the W column. I'm really hoping for a Rose dub. I used to be like, she pissed me off with that Carla Esparza fight. Because she did absolutely nothing and then had Pat Barry the whole time and Trevor Whitman both being like, yeah, no, this is what you have to do. Like, the crowd's booing you because you're winning. And I mean, that was just horrible. That was like, that almost makes me want to go against Thug Rose for like the rest of my life. But she's also been so tough throughout the course of her career. She's still young. She's only 31. She's held the belt now twice. It would be pretty sick if she could do it again the third time. And there is still an opportunity for her to do it here. She has to get a win over Amanda Ribas. And we've seen she's still with Trevor Whitman, I believe, right? I believe she is. And then she's still with Pat Barry, and that has been historically a winning combination for her in the past. Even though, she is over in her last two fights, it still has been a winning combination. We've seen what Trevor Whitman did with Justin Gaethje in that Dustin Poirier fight, the game planning there. It's the game planning is going to be big. It's like she's scared of the wrestling. Amanda Ribas is good with her jiu-jitsu and her wrestling, but I think you're going to see a very technical striking game plan out of Rose Namajunas. And her jiu-jitsu game is going to be strong as usual. So I think you're going to see Rose win this one in a pretty boring 5-round decision fight, where they're both just kind of like toying with each other for a little bit, throwing some stuff here and there. I would like to see Rose go back to that aggressive nature where she like looks for the finish. But, like I said, it's like that combination of Pat Barry and Trevor Whitman. You don't know what to expect from the two of them. It's either going to be Rose on fire or Rose on ice where she's doing absolutely nothing. So I'm going to go with Rose, though. Just tried and true. Former champ, double, twice over. So, historically, I have to go with Rose here. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I've just been looking at, trying to figure out if Rose is still with Trevor Whitman. I'm just seeing everything about why Pat Barry replaced Trevor Whitman in her corner at UFC Paris. Trevor Whitman quoted saying Pat Barry is single-handedly destroying her career. I don't know if they're still together, both her and Pat, or her and Trevor, or how that dynamic is going to work. So I think that's maybe something to keep an eye on. Obviously, turmoil in a personal life is probably going to lead to turmoil in a professional one. I think you have Amanda Ribas, who is probably not better at striking than Rose Namajunas. I think Rose Namajunas is probably more well-rounded. I think she's far more, technical, has the wins under her belt, but she's just so streaky. It's hard to know what kind of a Rose Namajunas are you going to get. Now, she fought Manon Fiorello, UFC Paris. She went up to 125. Lost that fight, but didn't look particularly bad there. She didn't get, thrown around by Manon Fiorello. So I think that was potentially a good point in her corner, or point for Rose Namajunas. Obviously, taking part of the most boring UFC fight or UFC championship fight of all time against Karl Esparza, losing her belt there. I think I'm going Rose. until like Rose proves to me that she can. I think she's got the skill advantage. I can't pick Amanda Hebos because I'm thinking Rose is going to come out there nuts. Although, you know, there has been some pictures taken or some rumors of like Rose not looking that in shape not too long ago. So I guess being that as it may, without knowing any additional other information and short of me being able to find anything in the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to go with Rose here. I think she's the more tactical fighter. I think she has better experience, and all things being equal, I think she would win more times than not. So that's where I'm going to lay my money here. Minus 185 seems a little steep because, again, you just have no idea what kind of Rose is going to show up. But yeah, I mean, she's had better performances. It's really Carlos Barza, which, you know, she was maybe being a little bit too defensive, trying to keep her belt and not being super active. Carlos Barza not doing anything to necessarily win the belt. I don't really know how they gave it to Carla. I mean, it's just a total inactivity. It seemed like a coin flip there. So I would have kept it with Rose, maybe as a punishment. I mean, honestly, I think Dana White said that he would have rather stripped the belt from both of them. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that would have been the better play. But with that being said, Manafero was a better showing, and I feel like Rose being down 0-2 is going to have something to come back from. So I'm going to go with Rose here. But yeah, you want to talk about just like a nothing burger of a card at a main event that really could be a main opener, if not a prelim final or something like this.
Yeah, this year or two ago would have been like third out from the main event. You know, on like a pay-per-view, but now, yeah, it could be like a middle event, you know, on a prelim somewhere. Rose, it's an absolute shame what's happening to her career if that's the case, because like Trevor Whitman is definitely an asset in a lot of people's corners, even though Kamaru Usman looks to have moved away from him a little bit too, or was he? No, he was there for the Hamzat fight, I think, but you know, he's back in like Killcliff primarily with those boys down in Florida, like Chandler and Gilbert Burns.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting because like I don't think that Rose really looks like she wants to fight in interviews anymore. She's very much in like the farming and the sustainability stuff, and you know, it probably is the case that like Pat Barry's the one keeping her around and like making her do it because you know, without getting too into things, like you know, there's probably a point in his life when he saw her and her potential and was like, oh, I can make her something. And then, you know, latched onto her like we all know that he did. And, you know, now there's probably a point where he's like, you have to keep fighting because it's more his vision than hers. Like she's very into like raising chickens and growing vegetables, you know, which is cool. But if you don't want to fight and you'd rather do that, then that's what you got to do, you know? You know, you just want to go see her do it if that's what she wants to do. If you don't want to keep fighting, is a brutal sport, and you have to be fully invested to want to do it. Do it. You know, otherwise you end up with fights like the one with Karl Esparza where you're scared to engage on the ground. You know, or you're scared to engage because of the possibility of going to the ground. It's like, no, you have to go in there and fight. So yeah, like you said, whatever version of Rose comes out this week, shitty card. But what are you gonna do? You want to do our pick rundown and then call it a day? Alrighty, on this main card, I got Luis Pajuelo over Fernando Padilla. I got Billy Quarantillo over Youssef Zalal. Cameron Saaiman over Payton Talbott. Edmen Shahbazyan over AJ Dobson. Justin Tafa over Carl Williams. And Rose Namajunas over Amanda Hebos. What do you got, Tom?
Fernando Padilla over Luis, but I should have quit while I was ahead. Billy Quarantillo as the lock of the card. Wow. Ever so slightly Cameron Saaiman. Let's do it. Eddie Shahbazyan over AJ Dobson. Justin Tafa over Carl Williams. And I know I said Rose Namajunas over Amanda Hebos, but that whole farming thing is new. I'm going to stay with Rose, but like minus 185, I'm not betting on it. Like, you know, I think probably a decision is maybe your best bet. I don't know, man. That's just such a snooze fest. Congratulations if you could get to the end of that.
Right. You know, part of me is kind of feeling like an Amanda Hebos submission is maybe in the cards. Like I'm kind of thinking maybe that's a possibility. But
no, I don't know if it would be a submission. I think Rose would get out of that. I think more likely, I think she would just kind of give up on the ground and to a ground and pound where she just like kind of forfeits the position and kind of like is throwing her legs around, flailing, and then the ref steps in because more or less because it's just bad TV.
You know why she get out? Because she's bald. When you're bald, you can get out of submissions easier. Look at Volk. Look at Rose. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Just to remind everybody, please like, comment, subscribe. There's a good chunkies here watching with us. Definitely should have subscribed and commented and liked and whatnot. I mean, I don't hate you because you didn't, but please do next time. Also, follow us on social media at PickinFightsTom, at PickinKeith, at _PickinWinners, at Spotify, Instagram. But yeah, Spotify. You can listen to us on Spotify. Watch the full video. Give us a rating on Spotify. Follow us on Spotify. Do all that stuff on Spotify as well as YouTube, please. Really helps us out. Am I missing anything, Tom?
No, man. Just like the video, subscribe for more, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Enjoy the fights. I don't know how you're gonna, but still do your best.
Try your best. Bye.